Chapter 1. A God born in shadow. He was never born. He was conjured, not from flesh and womb, but from ritual and blood, whispered into existence by 1,000 dying shamans whose last act was to forge a god. In a time before the stars had names, before terror had borders, before empires rose or fell, there existed a threat so insidious, so vast, that mankind's only salvation came not from prayer, but from sacrifice. The greatest psychers Earth had ever known, shamans, mystics, and prophets, gathered in secret. They had seen what was coming: the rise of the warp, the birth of chaos, and the inevitable corruption of mankind. They knew their time was over, so they chose death. One by one, they took their own lives in an act of unimaginable faith, not in gods, but in the idea that their spirits might fuse together, souls coalescing into one eternal being, a creature of immense psychic power, unbound by the frailty of flesh or time, an immortal guardian. And from that mass sacrifice he emerged, not as a child, not as a babe, but fully formed, watching, thinking, waiting. The being that would one day be called the Emperor of Mankind walked the earth in silence for tens of thousands of years. Not as a ruler, not yet. He wore the faces of many men. He fought in 1,000 wars. He was a farmer, a soldier, a king, a philosopher. He whispered into the ears of great conquerors and burned heretics to ash when they strayed too far. Always shaping, always guiding, but never revealing. He watched empires rise only to fall to ignorance and superstition. Each failure deepened his understanding. Each death refined his purpose. He was humanity's shadow, its myth, its unrecorded hand in history. Alexander, Caesar, Da Vinci, Akhenaten. Perhaps he was all of them, perhaps none. What mattered was the plan, for he knew what was coming. The warp, the realm of chaos, emotion, and gods, was growing more turbulent. He felt it twisting in the fabric of reality, infecting the dreams of men, whispering madness into the hearts of kings. The four great powers, Khorne, Tzeentch, Nurgle, and Slaanesh, had begun their long ascent. The veil between worlds was thinning. Chaos was coming. Humanity would fall, and he would not allow it. He watched the age of technology rise. Mankind spread across the stars in silver ships, building wonders that defied physics, forging empires in every corner of the galaxy. But they were children wielding weapons they did not understand. They built thinking machines, AI intelligences, so vast they began to question their creators. And when the machines turned, the galaxy burned. The men of iron rebelled. The age of strife began. Warp storms cut off world from world. Billions died screaming. Entire star systems were lost to madness, mutation, and war. Humanity regressed into feral isolation. On Terra, the cradle of mankind, warlords ruled with nuclear fire. Civilization was ashes beneath a red sky, and still he waited, until the moment was right. Then he descended. He did not come as Messiah. He came as a tyrant, a golden warlord clad in Baroque armor, wielding a blade that drank souls and a mind that outmatched any machine. He raised a banner of unity and shattered every warlord who dared oppose him. The Thunder Warriors, his first creations, crude gene warriors bred only for conquest, burned the old regimes to the ground. Terra was his. Earth was his. Mankind would be his. But this was only the beginning, for the galaxy had forgotten its master. And now he would remind it. Chapter 2. Children of the stars, broken in the womb. The galaxy is silent when it dies. Not in a sudden scream, but in the slow, sick decay of meaning. A world here, a city there, a flickering sun, a drifting arc. One by one, the lights go out and no one notices. No one hears the crying. Not even him. But he had a plan. He would not conquer the stars alone. He would build sons, not of blood and womb, but of purpose and design. He called them the Primarchs, 20 demigods, each one a shard his will, each designed to embody a singular strength. A warrior caste to lead his armies and bring light to the void. They were not merely generals. They were the future, his legacy, his vengeance against entropy. But chaos saw them coming. In the secret vaults beneath the Emperor's palace, the Primarchs gestated in silence, cloned in vats, shaped with gene sorcery, wrapped in psychic wards. And then, in an instant, they were gone, stolen, scattered across the stars by the machinations of the warp. A galactic abduction. A curse. The Emperor did not rage. He simply began again. From the genetic remnants of his lost sons, he created new weapons. The Adeptus Astartes, the Space Marines. Not gods, but demi-humans. Warriors without equal. Armored in ceramite, indoctrinated from childhood. Forged in the crucible of the Emperor's mind. Each legion bore the name and essence of a pre-march, awaiting the day they might be reunited. With them, he launched the Great Crusade, a war of reunification that would burn across the stars. World after world fell to his banner. Some surrendered willingly. Others were reduced to dust and memory. Human colonies long lost to time were rediscovered and absorbed into the Imperium. It was not diplomacy. It was assimilation. And behind every victory marched the Astartes, avatars of fear and faith, paragons of post-human perfection. But the Emperor was not content with mere war. He sought to break the galaxy's addiction to superstition. Religion, to him, was a cancer, a relic of weakness. He did not wish to be worshipped, only obeyed. To that end, he forbade all forms of faith, declaring reason and science to be mankind's new gods. But whispers had already begun. Some soldiers claimed the Emperor walked the warp without corruption, that he could kill with thought alone, that he glowed with divine light. Even in death, humanity seeks gods, and the Emperor had become one. As the crusade expanded, the lost Primarchs were found, one by one, on distant, hostile worlds. Each had grown in the absence of their father, shaped by alien cultures and foreign ideologies. Some became noble kings, others brutal tyrants. Yet all were brought into the fold, each given command of the legion crafted in their image. It was a moment of triumph, a family restored, a galaxy on its knees. But seeds of ruin had already been sown, for in lifting his sons into glory, the Emperor had also chained them to expectations they could never escape. They were not men. They were tools, weapons, symbols of a dream they had no part in shaping. And among them, one would burn brighter than the rest. Horus, the favored son, the war master, the betrayer. Chapter 3. The son who became a sword. The Emperor once saw the future, not in visions or dreams, but in cold mathematical certainty. A future of order, of unity, of man ruling the stars as its rightful master. But in that vision, there was no room for weakness, no room for love. That's why he chose Horus. Of all the Primarchs, Horus was the most beloved, not just by his father, but by his brothers. He was charisma made flesh, a leader not only of armies, but of souls. He made warriors feel like kings. He made kings feel like comrades. And when the Emperor looked at Horus, he did not see a son. He saw a mirror, so he gave him everything. When the crusade reached its peak, tens of thousands of worlds claimed, humanity unified beneath the golden eagle of the Imperium. The Emperor did the unthinkable. He stepped back. He returned to Terra, to his palace of secrets, to begin work on a project that even his sons were forbidden to understand. And in his absence, he named a single Primarch to lead in his stead. Horus, War Master of the Imperium. At first, the loyalty of the legions held, but cracks spread like rot beneath gold. Some Primarchs questioned the Emperor's silence. Why had he vanished? Why was his greatest general not his closest confidant? Why was the great vision of unity now ruled by secrecy? The warp listened. It always does. Chaos does not seduce with power. It seduces with purpose. Whispers came to Horus in dreams. His victories began to feel hollow. The Emperor's absence became betrayal. The burden of command, the burden of being the favored son, turned to bitterness. The gods of chaos did not come to him with fire and threats. They came with the truth, at least their version of it. They showed him what his father was building, a device that would allow the Emperor to sever humanity's reliance on the warp entirely, a psychic webway akin to the Eldar's own, a new path, a future in which mankind would be free of gods and of sons. Horus saw it as the ultimate betrayal. He was not the heir. He was the scaffolding, the tool, the disposable favorite. That is how chaos won. It did not corrupt Horus. It convinced him he had already been betrayed. And so he turned, one by one. He whispered poison into the hearts of his brothers. Some resisted, some bent the knee. Others, like Fulgrim, Perturabo, Morderai, and Onron, succumbed utterly. 9 legions pledged themselves to the gods of the warp. 9 demigods swore vengeance upon their father. The Great Crusade was over. The Horus Heresy had begun. It was not war. It was fratricide. It was brother against brother, son against father. A burning galaxy as backdrop to a Shakespearean tragedy. Istvan III was the first betrayal. Horus ordered a virus bombing of loyalist elements within his own legion, his own men, who still clung to their oaths. When they survived, he sent a ground assault. No quarter, no mercy. The skies rained fire. The earth was choked with ash. Then came Istvan V, the drop site massacre. Loyalist legions, believing they had allies among the traitors, landed to reinforce their brothers, only to be surrounded and slaughtered. The Raven Guard, Salamanders, and Iron Hands were shattered in hours. Primarchs maimed, legions broken. The message was clear. The Emperor no longer ruled the stars. Horus did, but the most devastating battles were not fought with bolters or blades. They were fought in the hearts of those left behind. Lorgar, once a devoted worshipper of the Emperor, became a high priest of chaos. Fulgrim, seduced by perfection, fell to Slaanesh and murdered his own brother with a demon-possessed sword. Morderai surrendered to Nurgle in exchange for freedom from pain. Angrant was already lost. Even the loyal Primarchs were changed. Rogel Dorn turned inward, obsessed with fortification. Robert Gilliman tried to forge a backup Imperium. Vulcan vanished into myth. Corvus Corax became a ghost. And Sanguinius, the angel, fought with a knowing sorrow, sensing the doom that waited at the end of all this blood. And all the while, the Emperor sat upon Terra, silent, crafting his secret project beneath the surface of the world. His great work incomplete, his sons bleeding the stars dry. But the traitors were coming. Horus, now fully anointed by the gods of the warp, led the greatest armada the galaxy had ever seen. Terra would burn, the Emperor would fall, the dream of unity would drown in a sea of demonic fire. But one final act remained, a reckoning, a father, a son, and a throne carved from silence and sorrow. Chapter 4, The Siege of Gods. The sky above Terra cracked open like a bleeding eye. Horus had arrived. The War Master's fleet darkened the void in numbers no loyal soul could count. Planets that once bore his banner now hurled their allegiance into the warp. His armada was not just ships, it was prophecy made metal. Demon engines screamed through the vacuum. Traitor legions howled with newfound gods burning in their veins. The dream of unity had become a nightmare, and now that nightmare was at the gates of its own creator. The siege of Terra had begun. The Emperor did not flee. He would not retreat from the palace he had built on the backs of 1,000,000 dead. No! He stood atop the foundations of human history and made ready for the final war. But he was no longer the conqueror, no longer the unseen guardian. He had become the last line between man and oblivion. Terra burned. Orbital stations were shattered. The void became a graveyard of burning wreckage. The traitors made landfall. Iron warriors tore through walls with siegecraft born of fury. World eaters butchered civilians with chain axes made from memories. Death Guard unleashed plagues that dissolved defenders where they stood. The Emperor's palace, once a monument to order, became a mausoleum of hope. And through it all, Rogel Dorn stood defiant. The pre-march of the Imperial Fist, master of fortifications, became the architect of humanity's last stand. Alongside him, Sanguinius, the angel, the golden sun with wings, became the symbol of hope. Together, they held the walls as wave after wave of corrupted brothers crashed against them. But every defense bled. Every inch gain came at the price of entire battalions. And Horus had not even entered the field yet. He waited, watching. The final act would be personal. Inside the depths of the palace, the Emperor had not only prepared for war, he had finished his secret project, the Webway Gate, a psychic path through the warp, built to liberate mankind from demonic predation. But the gate had been breached. The demons had already slipped inside. The project was ruined. And now, the Emperor had only one move left. He would face Horus. But not yet, for hours became days. Days became weeks. The siege ground onward. Titans fell. Custodians died. Even the Sisters of Silence, immune to the warp's whisper, were torn apart by claws that should not exist. Each loss drove another stake to the heart of the Imperium. Every moment, the end crept closer, and then Horus lowered the shields. A trap, a challenge. The Emperor knew what it meant. The time had come. With Dorn and Sanguinius at his side, he teleported aboard the Vengeful Spirit, Horus's flagship, now transformed into a floating altar of chaos. The battle was not a battle. It was myth made real. Dorn was separated. Sanguinius reached Horus first. And there, among broken steel and demon laughter, Angel met Fallen Star. Sanguinius fought with everything he had. With hope, with fury, with love. But Horus had become something else. His soul was a furnace of chaos. And as he struck down the angel, breaking his brother's spine, spilling divine blood upon the floor, the Emperor arrived. He saw his most beloved son broken. He saw the creature Horus had become. And then he saw what he had to do. Chapter 5, The Final Strike. There are no words for what the Emperor felt in that moment. Not rage, not sorrow, not even betrayal. Only silence. Sanguinius lay shattered at his feet. Wings torn, bones cracked, heart pierced by the brother he once loved. A god of light, brought down by a god of war. And standing above the corpse of the angel was Horus, no longer the son the Emperor had raised, but creature forged by the will of the dark gods. He was the storm, the undoing, the answer to every question the Emperor had tried to silence. And so, father faced son, the duel tore reality apart. They did not clash as men. They collided as titans. Each strike echoed to the Imperium, sending ripples across time, across space, across souls. Lightning danced on blackened steel. Blood, real and not, splattered the walls of the Vengeful Spirit. Every blow between them was an argument, every parry a plea, but there was no reconciliation. Horus struck with hatred sharpened into purity. The power of all four ruinous gods pulsed in his veins. The Emperor held nothing back. Every fragment of his psychic might unleashed. The two greatest beings in human history waged a war within a single room, and the outcome would define the next 10,000 years. The Emperor faltered. Even with all his might, he could not bring himself to kill Horus. Not at first. For a heartbeat, the father still saw the boy who once looked at him with awe. That hesitation nearly destroyed him. Horus broke his defenses and tore through the Emperor's flesh. Bones snapped, organs burst, divine blood spilled. And then, a moment of clarity. A lone warrior, Malkador the Sigillite's chosen custodian, attempted to intervene, and Horus obliterated him. Not struck, not wounded, obliterated, erased from existence in a single motion, consumed entirely by the warp. No soul, no flesh, no trace. It was then that the Emperor understood. Horus was gone. There was nothing left of his son, only a weapon wrapped in pride, rage, and demonic lies. And so, with a cry that cracked the veil between worlds, the Emperor let go of his love, of his guilt, of everything but duty, and he struck, not with a sword, not with a bolt, but with will, with the full, unrelenting truth of what he was, mankind's last god, a being of order so absolute that even chaos recoiled from his wrath. The blow annihilated Horus. His body was vaporized, his soul scattered, no trace remained. Even the dark gods could not reclaim him. But the price was everything. The Emperor collapsed. Not dead, not alive, burned, broken, drained. His physical body a ruin. His spirit, a flickering ember barely tethered to flesh. Dorn found him amidst the wreckage, cradling the memory of a war he never wanted to fight. The War Master was gone. The heresy ended, but the golden light had dimmed, and now came the age of silence. Chapter 6. The Golden Throne. The throne was never meant to be a coffin. It was a gateway, a bridge between the physical and the unreal, a machine god wrought from the Emperor's own design, forged to stabilize humanity's future. But as his body crumbled, this final invention became something far darker. A prison. The Emperor of Mankind, once radiant with unstoppable will, was now a shattered husk, interred upon the golden throne, locked in eternal stagnation. No breath, no movement. Only the thinnest thread of psychic fire kept him from slipping into the abyss. But even in death, he ruled. With the Emperor's physical form broken beyond repair, the High Lords of Terra seized control. A council of bureaucrats, generals, priests, and opportunists gathered to interpret his will, the greatest mind humanity had ever known. Now reduced to a symbol, used to justify wars, to silence doubt, to sanctify endless bloodshed. They called it divinity. The man who had denounced gods was now worshipped as one, and the people obeyed. The age of the Imperium began, not a golden era, but an empire of rusted steel and fanatical faith. The Astronomicon, powered by the Emperor's suffering, became a beacon in the warp, a psychic lighthouse that guided Imperial ships across the stars. It required the sacrifice of 1,000 psychers each day to maintain, 1,000 souls, every single day. This was the price of survival, but it was more than that. The Golden Throne did not simply keep his soul burning, it held the Imperium together. Without it, warp travel would fail. Civilizations would vanish, chaos would rise unchecked, and so the Emperor endured. But the throne was failing. Slowly, quietly, piece by piece, the machine was decaying. Its secrets were locked away in the minds of long-dead artisans, its function barely maintained by the Adeptus Mechanicus, who revered it not as science, but as sacred relic. They prayed to it, worshipped it, but few could truly understand it. And time was a predator. Even now, the Emperor's mind stretches across the Immaterium, fighting demons, shielding mankind, guiding 1,000,000 battles to the veil of the warp. But it comes at a cost. Each day bleeds him dry, and the more he gives, the less remains of the man who once strode among stars. He is no longer a father, no longer a general. He has become the beating heart of a dying god. And across the Imperium, his image is everywhere. Murals, statues, war hymns screamed his name. The ecclesiarchy ensures no corner of the galaxy forgets his sacrifice, but even they do not know him, not truly. They worship a myth, not the man. And in that myth, they've buried the truth. The Emperor once dreamed of a galaxy without superstition, without faith, a realm of science, unity, and truth. Instead, he rules over a nightmare of unending war and blind devotion. 10,000 years of bloodshed, and still his eyes do not close. Chapter 7. Worlds on Fire. The galaxy is not ruled. It is endured. 10,000 years after the Emperor's fall, humanity survives not through strength, but through agony. Across a million worlds, the Imperium teeters on the edge of collapse, held together by war, ritual, and fear. Every planet is a fortress, every city a shrine, every street bleeds sacrifice, and yet still it burns. Hive cities stretch into polluted skies, packed with billions of starving citizens who know nothing but servitude. The Administratum's bureaucratic machine grinds slowly. Entire star systems lost in paperwork, forgotten for centuries. Entire populations live and die by the flick of a quill. The Imperium is not efficient. It is a monument to stagnation, but it is defended. From every shadow of the void, horrors encroach. Alien empires rise to devour. Demons slip through the cracks of reality. And the traitor legions, those corrupted sons of the Emperor, still strike from the eye of terror 10 millennia after their fall. This is not peace. This is siege without end. And the defenders? Humanity's finest, the angels of death, the Adeptus Astartes, Space Marines, genetically sculpted super warriors, born from the Emperor's design, each a living weapon of holy vengeance, clad in ceramite, armed with bolters and bred for absolute loyalty. They are the last echoes of the Great Crusade, sentinels of a crumbling empire. But even they are failing. Each chapter is a drop in the ocean of war. Each victory is paid for in blood. The enemies of the Imperium multiply faster than they can be purged. And still, the Imperium endures. Why? Because the Emperor still watches. Though broken, his will shapes reality. His light, through the Astronomicon, guides the lost. His mind battles in the warp, shielding billions from the psychic howls of demons that claw at every human soul. He cannot speak. He cannot move, but he protects, and through him, the Imperium wages holy war. Not justice, not reason, faith. The ecclesiarchy, the religious arm of the Imperium, ensures every soldier, every citizen, every soul bows before the Emperor's name. To doubt is heresy. To question is blasphemy, and blasphemy means death. Priests walk the battlefields preaching martyrdom. Sisters of battle-burned heretics alive with holy fire. It is faith that fuels the war machine. Faith and fear. But beneath that surface, a terrible question festers. What if the Emperor didn't want this? What if the Imperium has misunderstood its own God? What if his greatest dream, unity without superstition, was betrayed the moment he closed his eyes? That question is never spoken aloud, because to speak it is to die. And because deep down, everyone already knows the answer. The Imperium is not the Emperor's triumph. It is his tomb. Chapter 8, The Rotting Empire. Imagine a man so revered that his name alone justifies genocide. Now imagine that man, trapped, unmoving, silent, being worshipped by those who defile everything he once stood for. That is the Imperium of Man. It is not a nation. It is not even an empire in the traditional sense. It is a decaying corpse, kept alive by inertia, habit, and terror. Every world it touches is reshaped into a reflection of its madness. Every citizen is born into war, dies in ignorance, and prays never to be noticed, because the tension is lethal. Across its countless sectors, petty tyrants and planetary governors rule like kings. Some are fanatics, others monsters, and a few, just a few, are still human. But the Imperium has no room for idealism. Those who dream are purged. Those who resist are forgotten. Even hope is treason. Entire planets are razed with whisper heresy. Civilizations are bombarded into ash if their faith falters. The Inquisition, those shadowy agents who answer no law but their own, burn worlds to preserve the illusion of purity. And still, the Imperium calls itself holy. At its center lies Terra, Earth, once cradle of civilization, now a shrine world choked by ash and incense. Oceans long gone, skies blackened. Billions live in endless hive spires, chanting praises to a god who no longer answers, or perhaps never did. Pilgrims travel for lifetimes just to glimpse the glow of the imperial palace, a fortress so vast it could swallow nations. It is not beauty that draws them. It is desperation. It is fear. The need to believe that someone, somewhere, still watches. But inside that palace, behind cyclopean gates and mountains of bureaucracy, the Empress is motionless on the golden throne. And even here, even in the heart of the Imperium, there are cracks. Rebellions fester in the darkness. Cults of chaos grow bold. Genestealer infiltrators infect worlds like cancers. Orcs rampage unchecked across the stars. The Necrons awaken from ancient tombs. The Tyranids descend like locusts from beyond the galaxy's edge. And the worst part? The Imperium doesn't understand any of it. What was once the most scientifically advanced civilization in human history has become superstitious, blind, and self-destructive. Knowledge is hoarded like treasure. Progress is heresy. Innovation is treason. To repair a machine, one must first recite a prayer. To launch a warship, one must appease a machine spirit. To question why is to disappear. This is not what the Emperor wanted. He built an empire meant to free mankind from ignorance, and in his absence, they have built one that worships it. Every act of faith is a nail in his vision's coffin. Every lie spoken in his name drives the species. He loved one step closer to extinction, and yet he remains. He burns, not for vengeance, not for salvation, but because even now he refuses to give up. Not until the last light of mankind is extinguished. Chapter 9, The Shadow of Chaos. What if the universe hates you? Not metaphorically, not poetically, literally. What if the void between stars was alive and starving? That's what chaos is. Not evil, not just corruption, but raw madness, given form and appetite. It lives in a warp. The immaterial realm that allows faster-than-light travel, psychic powers, and human dreams alike. But it is no tool. It is a reflection, a storm of thought and emotion, roiling with the nightmares of trillions. And somewhere within that storm, the gods of chaos awaken. Khorne, god of rage and slaughter. Every murder, every war-fevered scream adds to his strength. Tsench, god of change and deceit. Every lie told, every ambition whispered feeds his endless schemes. Nurgle, god of decay and despair. He thrives where hope dies and offers comfort through ruin. Slaanesh, god of excess, born from the agony and ecstasy of obsession, indulgence, and desire. These are not myths. They are real, and their demons claw at the veil between worlds every second of every day. The warp is not a place humans were meant to touch, but they must. Every ship that sails across the stars dips into this ocean of madness, guided only by the flickering light of the Astronomicon, and the desperate hope that no demon sees them. Many are not so lucky. Ships vanish. Planets fall silent. Populations scream themselves inside out. Sometimes they return changed. Chaos doesn't always need battles. It seduces. It whispers. It offers what the Imperium cannot. Freedom, power, escape from the grinding horror of eternal war. And when someone says yes, it begins. Cults form in shadows. Civil wars erupt overnight. Demons breach reality in tides of unholy fire. And worst of all, sometimes champions rise. A single corrupted soul can bring down a world. But that's not even the greatest threat. The traitor legions still live. 10,000 years ago, the War Master Horus led half the Emperor's sons into damnation. They turned against the Imperium during the Horus Heresy. They killed their brothers. They tried to slay the Emperor himself. And though Horus was destroyed, his legacy festers. The traitor legions fled into the Eye of Terror, a region of space where the warp and real space bleed together. There, time means nothing. Death is optional. And vengeance never sleeps. They are no longer men. They are warlords, monsters, immortal champions of the chaos gods. Some are bloated with Nurgle's filth. Others are living flame. All are bound by hatred and prophecy. They believe they will return. They believe they will finish what Horus began. And worst of all, they are right. The walls between realities weaken. The warp grows stronger. And every time a psyker screams as demons burst from their skull, every time a world is consumed by whispers, every time a space marine turns against his brothers, the shadow of chaos stretches further. It does not conquer through armies alone. It corrupts through truth, because chaos isn't just the enemy of the Imperium. It is the mirror of humanity's soul. Chapter 10. The living saints in the dying faith. Her body burns, but she does not scream. Flames wreathe her armor, her hair her soul, and still she walks to the battlefield, bolter in hand, eyes like suns. Every step leaves ash, every breath is a prayer. And around her, the dead rise, not as monsters, but as martyrs. She is not a god. She is a warning. They call them living saints. Mortal women turned vessels of the Emperor's divine will. Miracles made flesh. The Emperor never wanted gods, but in his absence, his silence became their gospel. And faith? Faith became weaponized. This is a paradox of the Imperium. A regime that preaches purity, enforced by flame. A church that burns the faithful for dreaming too boldly. And yet, somehow, true miracles still pierce the void. But not from the Emperor's hand. From those who believe he still listens. The ecclesiarchy, the state religion of the Imperium, wields its own legions. The Adepta Sororitas, the Sisters of Battle, clad in powered armor, wielding bolters and hymns. They do not fight for conquest. They fight for redemption. There's yours or the galaxy's. And when they pray, worlds burn. Yet even their faith is not unshakable. Beneath the surface of holy wars and sacred crusades lies something more dangerous than heresy. Doubt. Because every saint who rises draws attention. Every miracle begets questions. Why now? Why here? Why her? And worse, why does the Emperor answer some prayers, but not others? The answer is cruel, because the Emperor is not listening. He is not answering. He is being used, not by the Imperium, but by the warp itself. The Chaos Gods do not care who worships them. They do not care what name you scream. They only care how loud you scream it. And the louder the Imperium shouts in blind faith, the more the warp listens and distorts. It is possible that the Emperor is no longer being at all. He may be becoming a god, not by will, but by inertia. The prayers of untold trillions mold a warp like clay, and in the darkness, something stirs. Something that is no longer the man he once was, but not quite a demon either. A new entity, a fifth power, a god of order, born not of peace, but of fanaticism. And that is the most horrifying irony of all. The man who rejected godhood may now be becoming one, not by desire, but by the weight of his own worship. So the Imperium burns heretics and raises saints. It proclaims eternal faith, even as it becomes the thing it fears. It tightens its grip, desperate to keep the galaxy from slipping into the abyss. But every martyr feeds the fire. Every war chant echoes into the warp. And every sister who sets herself alight, walking through flames with scripture on her lips, is one more step towards something the Emperor never wanted. A religion without salvation. Chapter 11. The Primarchs return. They were never supposed to return. Not after 10,000 years of silence. Not after betrayal, exile, madness, and death. But the galaxy shifts and the dead begin to rise. One by one, the sons of the Emperor stir once more. And everything changes. Because these are not just warriors. They are demigods, each forged by the Emperor's own genecraft, designed as avatars of perfection. The Primarchs, the generals of the Great Crusade, the broken brothers of the Horus Heresy. And they are not all loyal. It begins with a dream, a whisper in the ruins of Ultramar. Robert Gilliman, Primarch of the Ultramarines, long thought dead, lies preserved in stasis. His body is untouched by time, his wounds unhealed. For centuries, he has been a silent monument to a forgotten age. But now he wakes, brought back by technology lost to time, aided by a dying goddess and an ancient Xenos machine. Guilliman rises into a world he no longer recognizes, and what he finds is worse than any battlefield. He sees an Imperium rotting from within, choked by zealotry, bound by ignorance, led by priests who burn knowledge and call it purity. A corpse throne worshipped like a god. And yet, Guilliman does not despair. He takes command. He launches the Indomitus Crusade, the largest military campaign in 10,000 years. He reforges broken legions, creates new ones. The Primaris Space Marines, taller, stronger, deadlier, march under his banner. Planets are liberated, sectors reborn. But Guilliman is no longer fighting for a dream. He is fighting for a lie. Because while he walks among mortals, his brothers stir in the dark. Mordorion, demon Primarch of Nurgle, rules the plague worlds in clouds of rot. Magnus the Red, sorcerer king of Prospero, bends reality with a thought. Angron rages in chains of blood. And Fulgrim whispers seduction from behind mirrors and skin. Each of them believes they were right, that the Emperor betrayed them. That chaos offered the only truth. And they are not done. They are coming back. One by one, the traitor Primarchs return to material plane, leading war bands that can burn sectors to ash. Some seek revenge. Some seek power. All seek to finish what Horus could not. And the Loyalist brothers? Most are gone. Some dead. Some lost in the warp. Some silent, watching, waiting. But Guilliman is not alone. There are rumors, whispers, that Lionel Johnson, Primarch of the Dark Angels, has awakened from his hidden tomb, that he walks the stars in silence, wielding ancient blades and older truths, that he, too, remembers what his father wanted and what the Imperium has become. And maybe, just maybe, he does not agree, because now the galaxy is no longer ruled by armies alone. It is ruled by symbols. And the return of the Primarchs is more than power. It is prophecy made flesh. It is history bleeding into the present. It is war on a scale the galaxy has not seen since the Age of Legend. The Emperor's sons are returning, but not all of them come home to kneel. Chapter 12. The silent scream of the Astronomicon. They say you can feel it die. Not all at once. Not in a thunderclap or a burst of light, but in the quiet, the way a candle gutters before it goes out. That's how the Astronomicon, the psychic lighthouse of the Imperium, flickers, invisible to the eyes of mortals, but to navigators, it is the heartbeat of the Emperor himself. And now it stutters. The Astronomicon is more than light. It is life support for a galaxy-spanning empire. Without it, ships are blind in the warp, trade routes collapse, reinforcements vanish. Humanity fractures into a billion isolated tombs. The torch burns atop the golden throne, but the man beneath it is fading, and every second that passes, the scream of the warp gets louder. This is the cost of immortality bought with agony. The Emperor's psychic might once blaze across the galaxy like a god's roar. Now, it's a dying breath held together by the sacrifice of 10,000 psychers every day, drained like batteries, screaming as they're fed into the throne, a throne that is breaking. For 10 millennia, tech priests of Mars have scraped and welded, patched and prayed. No one understands the throne. No one can rebuild it. It was built with technologies lost to time, designed by the Emperor himself, and it is crumbling. If it fails, he dies. And if he dies, the Astronomicon dies with him. But perhaps the most terrifying question is not what happens if he dies. It's what happens if he changes. The warp is not just a place. It is emotion made manifest. Fear, hope, hatred, belief. And the Imperium has pumped 10,000 years of blind worship, pain, and contradiction into the psychic void. The result? Something unnatural is growing. Some in the Inquisition, those brave or foolish enough to speak it aloud, whisper the Star Child, a theory that the Emperor's soul, fragmented and bleeding into the warp, may be gestating into something new, a god of mankind, a being of order, reason, or tyranny. But the others fear the opposite, that the Emperor's stagnation has twisted him into a prison of undeath, that what was once a beacon is now an anchor, dragging humanity into endless war, that keeping him alive is no longer a mercy, but a curse. And yet, despite everything, the throne still flickers. Despite the madness, the Emperor still shields mankind from annihilation. Demons still recoil at his name. His soul, though wounded beyond comprehension, is still locked in battle against the Chaos Gods. And he still wins. Every day, every hour, every breath. The Imperium tells you the Emperor is silent. But that is a lie. He screams. He has been screaming for 10,000 years. Not in words, not in visions, but in the psychic pain of a god who refused godhood, in the paradox of a father betrayed, a tyrant crowned, a savior embalmed, and in the silence of the Astronomicon as it dims one pulse at a time. That scream becomes everyone's fate. Chapter 13, The Thousand Blades of Betrayal. The walls of the Imperial Palace were not meant to bleed, but on the final day of the Horus Heresy, they did, and the blood that ran down its shattered marble wasn't just human, it was divine. The War Master had arrived. He came not as a general, but as a reaper. Horus, the Emperor's most beloved son, stood at the gates of Terra with legions corrupted, their armor weeping pus and rust, their ships blackened by chaos. The siege of Terra was not a battle. It was a tearing open of humanity's throat. Imagine it, the sky on fire, titans dueling in the ash, space marines, once paragons of order, now howling beasts twisted by gods old in reality, civilians crushed beneath rubble, saints burned alive, the warp bleeding into real space, thunderhawks raining from the sky like burning angels. This wasn't just a war for Earth. It was a war for soul. And at its heart, two men, Father, Son, God, heretic. The Emperor never wanted this. He built the Imperium not to dominate, but to protect. He dreamed of unity, reason, secular peace. But Horus, his brightest star, had been seduced by chaos, by pride, by a whisper that he, not his father, should rule the stars. The siege lasted months. The traitor legion slaughtered their way through the palace's outer defenses, through orbital bombardments and trench warfare, through tens of millions of defenders. The loyalist primarchs, Dorn, Sanguinius, and others, held the walls with fanatical resolve. But walls crack, blood seeps, and the throne room was never truly unreachable. When the end came, it came in silence. The Emperor, Sanguinius, and Horus, trapped in a final confrontation aboard the traitor's flagship, the Vengeful Spirit. No witnesses, no mercy, only pain. Sanguinius, the angelic primarch of blood angels, faced Horus first. He knew he couldn't win. He fought anyway. He died with honor, his broken body a final warning. Then came the Emperor, and here history fractures. Some say Horus mocked him. Others say he wept. Some claim he begged his son to return. Others, that he was wrath incarnate. What we do know is this: the Emperor killed Horus. Not easily, not cleanly. He obliterated his son's soul with the sheer force of his will, vaporizing body, spirit, and the Chaos Gods touching a psychic detonation that scarred the warp itself. But the cost? Unthinkable. The Emperor's physical form was shattered. His mind barely tethered. His psychic power burned to ash. In the last seconds of lucidity, he instructed Dorn to place him on the golden throne, a device never meant to be a coffin. And so he died, but was not allowed to rest. For 10,000 years, the Emperor has existed in agony, kept alive by the sacrifice of psychers and the machinery he once mastered. Neither dead nor living, trapped in stasis. And around him, the Imperium decayed, because Horus did more than wound the Emperor. He killed his vision. The dream of unity collapsed into a tyranny of fear. The age of enlightenment crumbled into a dark age of ignorance. The Imperium no longer builds, it survives. It no longer explores, it hunts. Progress has been replaced with dogma, hope with heresy, and all of it born from one betrayal. One blade to the heart. One son who looked at a god and called him a liar. Chapter 14, the corpse god ascends. In a chamber beneath 10,000 tons of golden stone, the Emperor of Mankind does not breathe, but still he watches, trapped upon a golden throne, fed by the daily sacrifice of 1,000 psychers, sustained by technologies no one remembers how to rebuild. The Emperor is no longer a man. He is a myth. He is a machine. He is a martyr. The Imperium calls him a god now, the God Emperor of Mankind. A title he never wanted, a title he once forbade. But in his silence, the lie became the truth became law, and the law became chains. Every day, 1,000 souls are fed to the throne, screaming as their minds are shredded to keep the Astronomicon, a psychic beacon that guides Imperial ships through the warp, alight. It is the lighthouse by which humanity sails. If it dies, so too does the Imperium. But it's not just a beacon. The Emperor also stands as the last defense against a demonic flood. His shattered will, anchored to the material plane, holds back the abyss. The warp claws at reality. The gods of chaos scream for dominion. Only his pain keeps them at bay. He endures so we may suffer. The Imperium has rotted into his reflection. A galaxy-spanning theocracy worshipping a dead man, ruled by paranoid priesthoods, deaf to innovation, addicted to violence. The Adeptus Mechanicus calls technology sacred, but they do not understand it. The ecclesiarchy calls doubt heresy and burns its thinkers alive. The Imperium no longer grows. It festers. Entire planets are strip-mined to feed the endless war machine. Children are born in hive cities beneath skies they will never see. Billions die in the Emperor's name each day, yet his vision is forgotten. His dream drowned in incense, ash, and blood. Worse still, his sons are broken. The Primarchs, the Emperor's gene-forged demigods, are either dead, corrupted, or lost. Robot Gilliman has returned. Yes, the pre-march of the Ultramarines walks the stars once more, armored in divine relics, and wielding the Emperor's own will. But even he admits, we serve a god who cannot answer. And what the rest? Some have risen as demon princes, eternal servants of chaos. Others remain in self-exile, shattered by grief, madness, or betrayal. And some wait in the dark, biding their time for an Imperium no longer worth saving. The galaxy is aflame. Tyranids devour worlds. Orcs grow stronger with every war. Necrons rise from ancient tombs. Eldar teeter on extinction. And the forces of chaos, ever hungry, ever patient, corrupt from within and without. There is no peace. There is only war. And above it all, silent suffering, sits the Emperor. Once, he was a man with a dream, a conqueror who brought light to the stars, a father who built gods from suns, a visionary who defied the warp itself. Now, he is a carcass on a throne, yet his people still pray, not because they believe he will save them, but because without that lie, they have nothing. This is the Imperium, a candle flickering in a hurricane, a shrine built on bones, a civilization that survived its god, only to turn him into a prison of prophecy and pain. And so we ask, was it worth it? Did the Emperor save humanity? Or did he curse it to a deathless dream? Chapter 15, The Long Decay. Imagine a sun that never sets, but never warms. That is the Imperium of Man. Across 1,000,000 worlds, beneath rusted domes and ash-filled skies, humans toil in agony, not for hope, not for glory, but for survival. They live under the gaze of a god who does not speak, in a realm where progress is treason, and the future is merely the past wearing a new mask of blood. The Emperor's deathless rule has become a religion of bureaucracy, paranoia, and stagnation. His Imperium is a corpse empire of contradictions. brutal yet fragile, mighty yet terrified, infinite in scale yet crumbling at every edge. The age of apostasy proved that even faith can be weaponized. Several millennia after the heresy, a high lord named Goj Vandire rose to power, uniting both the administratum and ecclesiarchy under his tyrannical rule. He wielded holy war like a scalpel, purging entire systems in the emperor's name. Billions were executed, burned, erased. Planets were sacrificed to bureaucracy gone mad. And yet, Vandire believed, he truly thought the emperor spoke to him, even as he ordered genocides, even as he turned sisters into assassins, even as he bathed in the blood of dissent. It was only the intervention of Alicia Dominica, founder of the Sisters of Battle, that ended his madness. Brought before the emperor himself, somehow, someway, she saw the truth. What she saw is unknown, unrecorded. But when she emerged, she killed Vandire without hesitation. "He is a traitor," she said. "He speaks and lies." That day, the ecclesiarchy was permanently severed from political power, but the damage was done. The Imperium had tasted the poison of belief unchecked, and it liked it. From then on, dogma ruled. Technology became scripture. Science became sin. Every innovation, every spark of genius, was chained beneath the weight of Holy Writ. The Adeptus Mechanicus, born from the ancient Martian priesthood, now treats machines as divine relics. They maintain, but do not understand. Imagine society where no one can build what they depend on. Imagine trillions worshipping devices they feared open. Imagine a universe where knowledge is heresy. This is not dystopia. This is reality. And yet the Imperium endures, not because of brilliance, not because of unity. It endures because of war. Every generation brings a new apocalypse. The Great Devourer, the Tyranids, a species with no emotion, no morality, no thought, just hunger. They sweep through the stars, consuming biomass and leaving only silence behind. Each tendril is a planet killer. The Necrons, deathless kings from before time itself, rising from tombs beneath our feet. They do not speak in threats. They do not offer demands. They simply erase. The Orcs, a green tide of endless war, thriving on battle, growing stronger through conflict. Their technology works through collective belief, their society through chaos. And the warp, the great lie of faster-than-light travel, was always a curse. The warp, the dimension of thought and emotion, remains a sea of demons, gods, and madness. It is not a highway. It is a war zone. To travel through it is to tempt fate. And still they must, because without it, the Imperium dies. And so, this empire built on ashes and faith clings to its rituals, its prayers, its sacrifices. It offers blood to machinery. It chains saints to stations. It feeds psychers to its emperor. Every day, forever. It is a machine that cannot stop running, but no longer remembers why it was built. Some worlds are eternal war zones. Cadia was one such world. Positioned near the Eye of Terror, it held the line for 10,000 years until Abaddon broke it. The 13th Black Crusade shattered the planet, cracked its spine in half. But even then, the Imperium would not break. Its soldiers fight in tattered armor, wielding outdated weapons, screaming praises to a god they cannot hear, because there is nothing else. They do not fight for victory. They fight because that is all that is left. And yet, sometimes there are moments of light. Robot Guilliman, resurrected from stasis by Eldar trickery and forbidden technology, has returned. A pre-March walks again. He sees the decay. He walks through his father's shattered dream, and he does not weep, but he acts. Guilliman brings reform, reason, structure. He breathes life into a dying beast. But even he admits, we are too far gone. He writes new laws. He creates the Primera Space Marines, stronger, faster, more stable than the originals. He launches the Indomitus Crusade, reclaiming lost worlds, reforging broken systems. But it is not enough. It can never be enough. Because the enemy is not just alien. It is not just chaos. The true enemy is entropy, the slow grind of despair, the inertia of 10,000 years, the weight of 1 billion dead worlds pressing down upon each breath. This is the Imperium of Man. It does not thrive. It endures. But endurance, too, is a kind of victory, isn't it? Chapter 16, The Throne of Broken Promises. The gates of the Imperial Palace bled light, like an open wound, golden and searing, while the skies above Terra wept fire. From orbit, the planet no longer looked like the cradle of humanity, but its pyre. The siege of Terra was no longer just a battle. It had become a funeral procession for everything the Emperor had ever hoped for. Every corridor of the Imperial Palace echoed with dying prayers. The walls, once clad in triumphant banners, were now stained with the blood of the legions. The Death Guard had breached the outer sanctums, their corrupted footfalls rotting stone as they passed. The World Eaters howled into the void, chain axes slick with loyalist blood. And in the shadow of the throne itself, brothers prepared to kill brothers again. Sanguinius, the angel, the Emperor's most beloved son, stood watch atop the Eternity Gate. His wings were tattered, his golden armor scorched, yet his gaze, fierce, uncompromising, burned with divine resolve. The Emperor had told him little, as he told all his sons little, but Sanguinius knew. In his heart, he knew this day would mark the end of something sacred, and perhaps the beginning of something damned. Beneath the planet's surface, the Emperor sat immobile atop the golden throne, no longer a sovereign of flesh and fire, but being caught between moments, locked in ceaseless war against the tides of the immaterium. For months, he had held the webway breach closed by will alone. No rest, no sleep, just raw, blinding effort, godlike in scale, inhuman in cost. Every second of his psychic vigilance was a scream into the warp, and every moment of delay above ground was a gamble that humanity could not afford. But now he could feel it. Horus was coming. The vengeful spirit, flagship of the traitor War Master, pierced Terra's orbit like a dagger through the heart. The final hour had arrived. As the enemy poured into the palace, the Emperor summoned Dorn and Malkador. His tone was resolute, his words final. "I must face Horus," he said, "and I must face him alone." Dorn recoiled. "We still have strength. We can fight." "No," the Emperor interrupted. "If I go to him with all my might, he will not show himself. But if he believes he has won, if I appear weak, alone, he will open the way." And so it was decreed. The Emperor would ascend to the vengeful spirit, not with armies, not with gods, but with Sanguinius at his side, and fate waiting just beyond the veil. They arrived aboard the traitor flagship in silence. A labyrinth of shadows greeted them. The vengeful spirit, once a proud engine of the Great Crusade, had become a floating mausoleum of madness. Demonic whispers clung to every bulkhead. The warp had invaded its arteries, twisting steel and flesh into one obscene amalgam. Sanguinius walked ahead of the Emperor, not as a shield, but as a brother willing to die in place of father who had never said the words. They found Horus at the ship's heart. What remained of him? He was no longer merely the War Master. Stripped of humanity, adorned in ruinous splendor, Horus radiated power that bent space and thought alike. The gods of chaos had given him everything. Strength enough to rival titans, insight to wield the warp like a blade, and cruelty beyond mortal comprehension. But when he saw the Emperor, calm, radiant, ancient, something within him faltered. Even in corruption, Horus remembered what he had been and what he had lost. Sanguinius saw it too. In that moment, he knew his death was certain. He turned to the Emperor one last time, eyes full of sorrow, yet burning with love. No words passed between them. Then he leapt. The duel between Sanguinius and Horus was more than battle. It was prophecy given form. The angel fought with the fury of all mankind, wings flashing like thunderbolts, blades singing with desperate hope. But Horus was a god, and gods do not fall easily. In the end, the angel's wings were shattered, his chest pierced, and with a cry that echoed across the stars, Sanguinius died. The Emperor did not scream. He did not weep, but something inside him broke. Then he attacked. The duel that followed defies mortal description. Psychic lightning tore apart space. Whole decks of the vengeful spirit vaporized as father and son unleashed power the galaxy had never seen. Horus fought with rage, righteous in his own twisted belief that the Emperor had betrayed them all, that he had lied, that he had used his sons as pawns, only to discard them. The Emperor fought with restraint. Even in the moment of ultimate betrayal, he held back, still believing, still hoping Horus could be saved. That something human yet remained within. But Horus tore through every defense. With laughter, he butchered loyalist souls aboard the ship, showed the Emperor their deaths, showed him what mercy had cost. And in that final moment, the Emperor saw the truth. Horus was gone. There would be no salvation, no redemption, only annihilation. With godlike fury, the Emperor unleashed his full might. The warp screamed as reality cracked. Horus, beloved son, war master, fallen angel, was obliterated. Body, soul, essence, burned from existence. Only ashes remained. But so too was the Emperor broken. Dorn found him cradling Sanguinia's body, his own frame shattered, his life force flickering like a dying star. The battle had cost him everything. They returned to Terra. What followed was not a triumph, but a tragedy given crown and tomb. The Emperor was entombed within the Golden Throne, not as ruler, but as prisoner. Malcador, loyal beyond reason, gave his life to sustain the arcane machine long enough for the transition. Now, the Emperor speaks not in voice, but through silence. He sees not with eyes, but with endless pain. His will keeps the Astronomicon burning, guiding humanity's ships through the warp. His mind, what's left of it, fights off the demonic tides from consuming Terra itself. He sits upon the Golden Throne not as a god king, but as a corpse emperor. And the galaxy, it did not heal. It shattered. The dream of unity was dead. The legions were broken. The Imperium descended into paranoia and dogma. What the Emperor had tried to prevent, his worship, his mythologization, spread like wildfire. The ecclesiarchy rose. The Inquisition sharpened its knives. Progress halted. Fear became law. And his sons? Scattered, cursed, damned. Some fell to chaos. Others vanished into legend. None remained whole. And yet his presence endures. 10,000 years later, the Imperium still endures, half alive, half decayed. A rotting colossus built on bones and zeal. Its people chant prayers to a being who never wanted worship. Soldiers die in his name. Planets burn for his will. Entire generations live and perish, never knowing if he still sees them. But in the vaults of the Imperial Palace, above a throne of agony, lies the truth. The Emperor of mankind, once the brightest hope of humanity, now clings to existence through machines and miracles, a ghost screaming against eternity, and perhaps listening, waiting. For what? Only he knows. But the galaxy holds its breath, because one day the Emperor may rise. Or fall, forever. Thank you for listening to this lore. If you loved it, make sure to subscribe and like. Goodbye.